Hey everyone, welcome to episode 9 of Samurai Brothers Wrestling. I am John and I'm here with my brother Matthew. How you doing, Matthew?
I'm doing pretty good. I enjoyed the Easter weekend off. It's nice to have the occasional weekend off when there's really not that much activity.
Yeah, and hope everyone else had a good Easter weekend also. And so we're gonna get right back into the thick of things, Matthew. As you know, this week the U.S. Open is starting, and so I'm very sure that pretty much all the clubs, a lot of wrestlers are going to descend on Las Vegas to compete. And the U.S. Open is mainly seen as, if you're placing at the U.S. Open, then you have a good chance to. Well, no, you do have a chance to challenge for the world team, as we talked about last week. Top placers, top 7 placers, I think, in each of the senior categories are going to be eligible to compete at the world team trials. So, the challenge tournament, which will occur first, that's going to take place in May. And the winner of the challenge tournament will progress to the final X events in Stillwater and in New York to challenge, if there's a finalist for Final X that has accepted their berth, then they will wrestle off for that world team trial spot to represent the U.S. this year at the World Championships. So, with that being said, I did look at some, how the registrations are going for the major weight categories. But before we get into that, just something that caught my eye when I was doing research today was there was a tournament that was sponsored, Matthew, by Intermat, and it was called the Freestyle College Tournament. And when I looked at this, it looks like they invited 8 American universities to participate in this event. And but from what I saw of it, what they basically did was they pooled a lot of the guys together, guys and gals, to just have some matches is what this looked like. So some of the weight classes they did do like placing. If they had like 2 pools, then like the winner of each pool would face each other for who would be first, who would be third, that sort of thing. But Matthew, when Intermat is sponsoring this and they're trying to just kind of get people together, do you think that they're just trying to give people some warm up, give some matches and stuff so that they're going to be ready for the U.S. Open?
Probably. It sounds like it was just something to, just get the guys out there and give them a bridge, kind of to be able to do something, because there aren't that many major tournaments. I mean, there aren't that many major tournaments, so they were probably just going out there and giving them something to do while they're in between. So
Yeah. So let me see here. Can you see the screen?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is it's the men's division, Intermat Freestyle Open in New Jersey. And looks like they also, at that event, that they had some girls' high schools teams do some dual events also. So, kind of getting those out there too. So of note, it looks like you had Vito Arujau, who was an All-American at the NCAA tournament, competed. I think Greg Diakomalis, who's the brother of Yanni Diakomalis, who is the reigning champion for Cornell, was also competing. I think Yanni did also compete as well at the tournament. Although he did wrestle up a weight, he was wrestling at 70 kilos instead of the 65 kilos that he's qualified for. But, you know, again, probably just trying to get himself ready and stuff. Arujao obviously wrestled, won his weight class, his pool. You know, so, and depending on, you know, how big the weight classes were, you know, you might have seen anywhere from, you know, just being you would have a 3-man pool, you wrestle your matches, and then you know, wrestle, you know, for a first place match or third place match. So as you can see below, you had Vito Arujao. He won his pool. So they had 2 pools here. Now, from what it seemed like, you'd have an A division and a B division. Now, I don't know how they split them up, but the A division at 57, you had only 6 people total, and then the B division you had 8 people. So it was probably just to make sure that there wasn't any uneven, you know, matchups in terms of how many people per weight class. But you know, so I think it was interesting to see how that turned out. That, you know, it's like, hey, you know, get a lot of guys together, and I think that's important. You know, kind of wish they would have it more out here too. You know, I think one of the problems I feel is that there's not enough opportunity for open weight classes out here. As far as I know, not even the Orange County Wrestling Association, they stopped doing open weight classes, you know, during the freestyle season quite a few years ago. So only the LA Wrestling Association does it out here. Do you think that's more or less that people are going to the various, you know, RTCs, and so there's not really a lot of, you know, participation?
Yeah, I guess the idea is that with a lot of these associations is that if you're going to be a serious wrestler, then you're going to go out and you're going to participate in the RTCs. But of course, they don't. Let's face it, they don't take casual wrestling like, you know, we're not going to go out there and like try to make it go for the Olympics. We're just trying to get back in shape, and we just have a love for the sport. We're just going to go out there and do it casually. We're not going to go out there and try to, you know, go for the Olympics. We're just trying to lose our belly fat and just have some fun doing it. That's our whole point. So they just don't take that into consideration when they're doing tournaments. So it's kind of unfortunate. And it's, you know, I'm pretty sure that with the Orange County Association, they probably did have that thing in mind with the when they were doing the casual tournaments, but you know, they lost that. At somewhere down the line, they basically lost that desire, and we're just like, you know, if, you know, there's no reason in doing it. But it's like, you know, if it's like have it, and if no one does it, no one does it. I mean, what are you going to lose? I mean, they used to do grappling, for goodness sake, back when Fila was sponsoring, you know, grappling events. They used to do that. So
yeah, I think the grappling transitioned more to the jiu-jitsu and stuff, I think, if memory serves me right.
Yeah, it was submission wrestling.
So I do know, have you ever heard of well, do you remember SCWAY? That's the youth wrestling organization that's
right. They do stuff when during the winter.
Sure. Yeah, they do youth wrestling events during the high school season, so that, you know,
to keep the kids doing something, because they're in both the fall and the spring.
Right.
They have youth weight classes. So it's just those tournaments are conducted by the what's it called?
Run by one of our favorite coaches of all time, Steve Lawson. But
wait, does he wait a minute? What does he run?
so SCWAY is one of Steve Lawson's projects in terms of helping youth wrestling.
Oh, it's his pet project, huh?
Yeah, yeah. And then I think there's some
Did
other.
he start out as a youth wrestler?
I'm sorry.
Did he start out as a youth wrestler? I don't know how.
Yeah, actually, so I saw a because I was trying to research to see if maybe someone might have tried to resurrect TMI somewhere. So I was trying to look up the person who originally who created TMI, if you remember, Tournament Masters Incorporated. That had all the brackets of all the tournaments that they did over the years. And that person, Todd Tomaszek, was teammates with Steve Lawson, apparently.
Like little kid Steve Lawson?
Yeah, the Steve Lawson from El Dorado. Yeah.
That's what I mean, like younger Steve Lawson.
Yeah, younger Steve Lawson.
Oh, so okay. That would make perfect sense because he went to every single El Dorado tournament. Him personally.
Who?
The tournament, the TMI guy.
Oh, Tomaszek?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you see him there by chance? Or you just know that he was there?
He was there. Yeah, I saw him. There
Okay.
there was one time when he was in their wrestling room.
Uh-huh.
And because they would take some of the mats out, so he was, and because they would use the wrestling room as a staging area. There was one time he went into he was in the wrestling room, and he had to go to the coach's room in the locker rooms outside the building because it was too hot in there, and his computer was overheating.
So I do know that there's another person. She will still help us out. I guess the other person who would help with the tournaments, which was I think Natalie Hayes. She always does Laguna Hills because that's where she's from, around that area. But she does do the tournament brackets for Santa Ana College when we host our tournament. So I mean, they still will do that, but I think just not as they don't put the brackets up anymore, because I know that TMI's website went dark during COVID, so which was really unfortunate that happened. And I actually was able to.
If we're gonna face facts, TMI was similar to how I'm doing with MMA Freak, where it's like I'm running it. And whatever money in business, it's like I get it, and
Oh yeah. Well, I actually was able to find TMI on the web archives.
Well, that's
so
good.
Someone had actually, archived it. The only unfortunate thing was that they did not. When I was trying to go through the brackets of all the past tournaments, I guess what people didn't realize is that you had to archive the bracket links also. So people didn't do that. And so if you try to, only a few of the brackets actually got archived.
Did they archive the results?
So yeah, some of the PDFs on the results got archived, but only a few. Not all of them. One trend I noticed was that because I'm going through the archives right now, the archive version of TMI, and I'm just trying to find any brackets I can find, and it doesn't matter what year it is, because I think personally, I think it's important to save that history, for people.
It is important to say that it's there was this time where I was doing like research into that myself. And I'm surprised that no one saved. It's like no one saved league championships. No one saved state championships. Even like the OC register. It's like I can't believe there's this like big intricate like they saved state, like if you look back at the right website, there's an archive state championship history for California, but it's one of those things where it's just like, how is it that no one archived any of this stuff? There's got to be record keeping somewhere. TMI only became the prominent keeper. Like, someone had to keep archives of this stuff. It's like, do you go to CIF? Who do you go to for all of this archived information?
Yeah, that's the thing, because if you go to CIF, they only have information back maybe to I know up to the early 2010s, but then they're not really archiving anything before that. So, but I do know that Cal Grappler, which took over for the California Wrestler. Now I'm gonna try and go into the web archives to find California Wrestler next, because I'm really hoping that someone did archive California Wrestler, because the amazing thing about what you could find at the California Wrestler was that they actually had all the people who placed when CIF State first started back in the 70s. They had all that information. They even had, I think I even saw brackets of the state championships. But so yes,
has archived all that stuff. It's just somewhere in the ether of the internet, right?
And one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to rag against Todd Tomazik for not keeping the website up. I understand that COVID really took a hit on everyone, and he runs his own business. So anybody who's watching, please, he does heavy duty what do you call that, vehicle rentals and stuff. So if you are in need of doing construction work and stuff like that, and I'm not doing this out of any obligation to Todd Tomazik, but HawkeyeRentals.com. The website is his business website is still up. So if you are in need of
this is not a sponsorship. This is just.
It's not sponsored, but you know what?
I don't have any sponsors for our podcast.
No, I'm doing that simply for giving back to a man who gave back to the community. So yeah, just FYI.
I'm sure if we develop enough of a following, then at some point we'll probably get some sponsorships.
But I think you can only do so much when nobody's coming to you, and you're paying to keep a website up, but there's no, because I know that I guess TMI would charge to have the tournament, tournaments running and stuff like that. Anyway, but one thing I'm grateful for now, and I think that a lot of kids right now, college wrestlers and stuff, the great thing now is track wrestling. My goodness, track wrestling goes back quite a bit of ways. And the California JC coaches associations and stuff, they got smart enough to since 2011 the JC state tournament has been on track wrestling, which is good, because if something were to happen to track, I mean, that's a lot of history lost right there. But I'm very confident that they would be able to bring it back up, with especially now that Flo is the owner of track wrestling. But
I'm surprised that Flo hasn't started like putting all that behind a paywall or something like that. Well, they're probably smart enough to realize that it operated very specifically, and that it was only because of the way it operated that it's successful. Mm-hmm. So if they want to keep it that successful, they need to,
and here's the thing: to have track wrestling running on your tournament, I think you have to buy a package or something. Okay, so that means that. I'm sorry.
So they're still making money off of that.
Yeah, so they'd be making money on that. So then once they've made their money on it, they're making the brackets available for people to see, because they made their money on it. So, that goes without saying. So I think it's just very important, for people to save that history. There was I was looking at, I did find a website, and this is whatever organization in New York, you know, whatever wrestling association in New York that's over there, they have a website. It's called armdrag.com. And that is basically their archives. And they've got,
So it's their Cal wrestler.
yeah, in a sense.
Grappler.
Right. They're Cal Grappler. And they've got history, you know, back to the 50s, I think. But the other thing I found that was really out there was that they've got brackets from when the NCAA tournament first started.
In the what was it, in the 30s or was it the 20s?
1929 was the first time that the tournament took place. So that is, you know, to be able to have that, and you know, because it's New York, you know, being how old New York is, you know, in the country, I mean, I guess that would not surprise me. And you know, wrestling's always was an Eastern, what would it be, like a Midwest Eastern thing, East Coast thing. So, but I'm gonna, you know, go in there at some point because I want to really see, you know, how much of that data that they have. That's going to be really something. But you know,
Well,
just
you know, it's like all these organizations, they have to have archives somewhere. It's like they had to have done these tournaments, so they have to have been archived somewhere, whether they're not in like on the net or not. It's got to be somewhere. So I guess the question would be where, and what would, it's like, what would it, you know, would someone have to start digging into these archives to find this stuff? Well, like one thing to remember with with California, for example, is that, you know, California didn't start having a state football championship until, I can't remember if I was still in high school. It might have been my senior year because I remember Olu was in contention and they won it. Mm-hmm. So some sports have been having, you know, the state championships for a while now, but others, it's a more recent thing. So
yeah, I'm really hoping that, you know, because I think it's important to be able to keep that and make it available for people to see. Like, for example, when I was looking back at the earlier brackets that were saved on TMI, I couldn't find the brackets that, you know, when you actually placed at CIF, unfortunately. So that's something that, you know, is really regretful on my end. That's like, hey, we didn't go in and save them. But I did find when you made CIF the first time, and then but I did find the bracket. They did have the bracket of the Estancia tournament that you placed fourth at, and
yeah.
So I did find that bracket. So at least there's a bracket that we have you where you placed somewhere. You know, so I'll take it. It's better than nothing. But anyway, you know, this is something to work on. You know, I think we'll move forward. We'll keep going. I mean, if I can try to reach out to, you know, Todd Tomazik or, you know, Natalie Hayes about maybe trying to retrieve some of those brackets, I would love to try and do that if they have them. My guess is they probably uploaded to the website and then deleted the original, you know, files because they felt, you know, maybe they didn't have a need for it, but hopefully not. Hopefully maybe it's somewhere, but who knows. So anyway, it goes without saying. Just to kind of close out about the tournament that was hosted by Intermat. So they had 4 girls high schools that competed. You had Team Ontario, Team Crash, Team Centurion Pride, and Team New Jersey. So, and it looks like the winner of the
It sounds
of
like
that
Team Ontario would probably be like the Canadian Ontario.
would be a what?
It sounds like Team Ontario would be like the Canadian Ontario.
Yeah, I think it is. Anyway, so yeah, the Team Ontario was the winner of that one. And they beat Team Crash pretty good in the final bout. 39-9 was the final score. And I'm not sure how they score freestyle, but that's something, you know, because I know that it's a little bit different than how you would score a regular folk style match. But at least they're scoring. That's I got to give it to them on that one. Anyway, so Matthew, just want to kind of get into the U.S. Open. So I looked at the who all is, you know, I looked at all the registrations that they've made. And, you know, of note, I think, I don't know that I saw anybody of note. I mean, there are some names that we've talked about recently. Like, for example, you had some of the lightweight guys, like, for example, where was he at? He might have been down lower. But, you know, I think this is more a lot of people who are just trying to get into that world team, you know, into that world team trial tournament versus, you know, the major players, because they're already at the world teams, you know, they just kind of want to, you know, sit back, it seems, you know, to kind of rest up for getting, you know, wrestling at the world team trials. So you think that, you know, what do you think we can expect though? I mean, given that there's as normal, there's a lot of people, you know, 57 is kind of somewhat right now. You've got probably enough for a 24-man bracket registered. Now, this also doesn't include anybody who's going to walk, you know, do a walk up. So we could see a few more people lined up for this. But you know, I think one of these days, I'm hoping that we can go, you know, maybe if we can get down low enough and compete and stuff. But I think things can get pretty hectic, don't you think, when it comes to the U.S. Open?
Well, yeah, because as we've said, it's an open tournament. People can pre-register to save on, you know, to weigh in the day earlier or and save on money. But then you've also got the people who are just gonna show up day of, weigh in, and then start wrestling. So
now I'm looking at the 70. I'm looking at the 70 kilo weight class, and probably just with pre-registered, you're already looking at a 32-man bracket with just 70 kilo pre-registered.
and that's a 2-day tournament, right?
Yes, so I think weigh-ins for a lot of the divisions are going to start tomorrow, because I think the official competition runs from the 20. Actually, I think weigh-ins are probably going to be the 26th. I know that competition is going to be running from the 27th to the 30th, I believe. The 30th or the 1st. But so it's, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I think, you know, looking at this, probably a lot of the weight classes that are not, I mean, even 74 though, you know, even, you know, because I think 74 is where Dake is at. But a lot of guys look like they want to take on Dake. Now, here's a name that does stick out as far as like, you know, people that we've known about. Jason Nolf you know, from Penn State. He is going to compete, so he's probably going to be a front runner for trying to win that weight class, meaning that, you know, he wants to get into that semifinals. So it looks like he's going to be one. You know, when I'm trying to look at who else is available, do you remember Isaiah Martinez?
The name sounds familiar.
Oh, he was a national champion for Illinois, but he was a wrestler from California. So he's registered at 79 kilos. Although it looks like his residence, the state where he's coming from, is going to be Oregon instead of California, even though he's a part of the Titan Mercury Wrestling Club. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing. We have Vincenzo Joseph. He's going to be competing at 79 kilos also. If I'm looking through at some of the other ones, so, you know, I mean, people here and there, and again, you know, because we've been kind of out of this for so long, it's kind of hard to tell, you know, some of these people have probably done stuff. But because we haven't really been involved with it, you know, since we're starting out now, you know, we don't know a lot of these things. I certainly don't know a lot of the names that I'm seeing on here, but you know, I think I'm hoping that can improve. Let me share it so that you can see people, and if you do recognize a few names. So moving on to the women's freestyle, you know,
Victoria Anthony's the obvious one.
Yes, Victoria Anthony is the obvious.
Sun-Kissed Kids.
Yeah, so she's.
I'm gonna be honest. Whenever I think of a wrestling club, I think of the Sun-Kissed Kids. That's the club that I always knew of the most.
Mm-hmm. So she's gonna definitely be, you know, because she is a world champion and stuff, a world placer, world medalist, and then I am seeing, you know, this looks like 50 kilos. That's gonna be a 16 woman bracket 50,
but again, that doesn't include
right,
everyone is gonna walk in.
So 53, you only have 10 women, I think, so far that are pre-registered. 55 is a bit smaller, and I think I know the
one of those weird things where it's like 2 kilos. That's 4 pounds.
Yeah, you got a 2 kilo difference between, you know.
Oh, and then there's another 2 kilos.
Right. So you go
57. That's like, what's up with these 4 pound weight classes?
And 59.
What's up with all these 4 pound weight? What is this, boxing? Like you know how there's like all these different weight classes in boxing, right? It's just like, what is this?
Uh-huh.
Oh, and then and you know, that's like the gap between 50 and 56. I mean, that's like 6 pounds, but still, that's not that far off. What is 62? What is this box?
And then 65, yeah.
I'm just looking at all these gaps. I'm just like, what? I know that women on average are smaller, and what? If a woman wanted to, she could cut like 2 or 3 weight classes probably from her natural weight. It's like this. I'm befuddled. I'm flabbergasted. Whatever word you want to use. I'm just like, what's going on here?
Well, I think probably that's why, you know, they probably, you know, there's, well, actually, I think
72 is a larger gap. No, that's not that large either.
Well, I think one of the things though, they don't want
the largest gap is 76 because that's not that large either. Especially when you consider all these gaps that they have in the men's weight classes. There'll be like 10-pound gaps.
Well, one thing that I might, you know, when you're thinking about it is that you know, I don't think they want the women to be too big. You know, they want them to be, you know, somewhat athletic. And, you know, the guy's got to be somewhat athletic too. But yeah, you know, when you're thinking about it, when you know, the heavyweight weight classes in the men's size is almost, you know, and I say almost twice the size as the heaviest weight class in the women's. You know, you've got quite the gap there. But, you know, I think because they're capping it at 76, when you have to think about it, you know, each weight class, at least according to the UWW standards right now, or you know, the way that the weight classes are set up, each style has 10 weight classes. So when you're only going to have, you know,
that's 10 non-Olympic weight classes, and then
no, 10 weight classes in total. 10 weight classes in total, and then I think it's 7.
I mean, yeah, I meant on non-Olympic years. It's
right, right.
And then
it's classes in total, and then 7 of them are going to be Olympic. So, but you know, in this case, where UWW,
I thought 6.
No, I think it's 7. The last I had heard, it was 7. Now, I'll be more than happy to go back to that. Let's see here. UWW Olympic weight classes. Oh, you're right. It is 6.
Yeah, those. I'm looking at the Olympics for last year. It was 6.
Yeah. Okay, you're right. So I stand corrected. Really, yeah. Now I wish they would put it up to 7. Anyway.
Well, you have to remember, wrestling has changed so much over the years. You know something interesting? I looked up the results of the first Olympics. There was 1 weight class. And I think it was Greco.
Well, here's the thing where I think that, you know, because of how things are with the women.
Yeah, it was 1 Greco-Roman.
So UWW, they have it so that the first weight class starts at 50, and then they're capping it off at 26. And you have 10 weight classes to fit in a 26 kilo span. So I think I can see why, you know, they have to make it so that you're having no more than a 4 kilo, you know, you're having between a 2 to 4 kilo difference, because you've got to compact it when you only have 26 kilos to work with, fitting 10 weight classes in there.
Isn't the women's college heavyweight class larger than that? Like, I think it's in like the 200-pound range.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if maybe they expanded, you know.
Because I remember the doing sparring with the heavyweight girl at Mobap, Desiree Mamiya, at the time, and she was a big Samoan girl. And well, actually, 180 wasn't the heaviest weight class, but she cut down there because I guess she didn't want to wrestle heavyweight. But and I remember we it was competitive between us. It's like we were all friends off the mat, but it's like on the mat, when, you know, those times where she would need a training partner. None of the other girls were heavy enough, and here I am. I'm the little squirt, like, you know, not that good wrestler. So they just had me wrestle her, and we'd go at it.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, how that works out, you know, maybe they might adjust something in the future, maybe after the next Olympics. I don't know.
It's
But
something that's constantly adjusting, and at least this time it's not the rules that are constantly adjusting.
yeah, that's true.
Like they were between 2005 and was it 2012 or 2016?
Yeah, 2004 was when it got weird, and then yeah, 2016 when they were threatening to cut the Olympics. That's when
They
you
said
know,
we're
because
going back.
I'll tell you what,
We're going back to the 2004 rules.
in a way, yes. In a way, yes, because they had that weird best 2 out of 3 rule, which I was never a fan of, although it
And they
benefited
kept
me.
changing the push out rule.
Yeah, the push out rule kept changing.
Because first it was the person who was pushing out got the point. Then it was the person who got pushed out got the point. It kept flip. It's like the flux during that time. It's like, what are you people doing? It was just this bizarre continual rule change. No one can keep up with it.
Well,
it's like no wonder we were in danger of getting cut after 2016.
Well, here's another thing. The boundaries of getting pushed out kept changing also, because at first it was if you stepped on the line, that was a point. Then it became
both feet.
Then it became if the foot had to fully be out. And then the other thing was then it became a weird if you were trying to flip the other person out or something, or if you were trying to push the person out but they got out of the way and then you stepped out yourself, then the point went to the other person. And I think now the way it is that the aggressor that pushes them out is going to score the point.
Yeah, that's the one thing is they kept the
right.
Yeah, they kept the sumo point, let's call it.
Right, they kept the sumo point. I think the big thing was that they went back to the 2-3 minute periods. They needed to go back to that because the weird 3 2-minute rules, best 2 out of 3, that was just ludicrous. And then the other thing was that the whole tech fall rules also, you know,
2 threes ended it, a 5-pointer ended it.
That or you had to be ahead by 6 points or 8 points in Greco. You know, it's just it was all inconsistent. I think though,
and it kept changing from year to year.
Right. I think though in Greco, if you're ahead by 8 points, currently that constitutes a tech fall in Greco.
So they kept that, but they reverted the freestyle back to 10 points.
Correct.
Okay.
So
that's one. I'm gonna be honest. That's one of the reasons why it's one of the reasons why I got turned off from international competition. I didn't know what I was watching. I didn't know what I was watching Greco. I didn't know what I was watching freestyle. I didn't know. It's like the sport became virtually unrecognizable for me. So I was just like, why? It's like that's why when I watched wrestling, it was college or high school because I knew what was happening. I didn't know what was happening in freestyle anymore or Greco.
Speaking of Greco,
like I tried competing, but there were times when I would lose a match. I'm like, how? Like,
yeah, you could have dominated your opponent in the first period, but then you could have lost the next 2 periods by 1 point, and that would have constituted you losing the match. That's what it basically came down to.
Yeah, like that. Like I told you that one. Was it the 1 or 2 times? But the guys that I wrestled the Armenian, obviously I wasn't gonna win against him anyways. But he just did one suplex, and that was the match. Because it was the 5-pointer, and it's like, well, granted he was winning anyways. he was gonna win, but that was the period.
So
He might have done 2 of those on me.
I'll tell you what though, I did benefit from the from the rules because I ended up being matched. I you know, I went out just trying to wrestle one year. You know, here I was still overweight and stuff like that.
Probably not as rotund as you are now. I'm sorry, but that's
but so I ended up wrestling against a CIF champion from El Dorado, Frank Velarde.
The
And
name sounds vaguely familiar.
yeah, and he dominated me the first match, but then the second and third periods, I was winning on pushing him out and stuff like that. It was just really bizarre, so I can say that at a freestyle tournament, I was able to beat a CIF champion, CIF divisional champion.
I wonder how you would have done if you wrestled in CIF. That would have been just because of how the Japanese wrestling was structured, there was a lot of questions that were just left unanswered because there's no equivalent to how the American system works. I mean, let's face it. Far East made more the Far East tournament made more sense. The Far East tournament, the Kanto tournament, anything like that made more sense than how the Japanese system worked.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it really did. Unfortunately, but
and we railed on the Japanese system the last.
That's why we're trying to come back. The Samurai Brothers, we're coming back.
Yes,
y'all get ready.
Yes, the Samurai Brothers.
Make some noise.
The true samurai descendants.
We're gonna make some noise. So, Math, I think, excuse me. Again, I saw Colton Schultz as the notable person that's registered for for Senior Greco. Although here's an interesting. I didn't realize this came up here. I'm going to show you this. Screen share this. Here's something interesting. Okay, so look at the club name of Mr. Tyler Kurd, who's directly above Colton Schultz.
Interesting.
Hey, whatever works. Whatever works.
I think the Cobra Kai series, I need to get caught up on that because I actually do like the whole Karate Kid series. But the whole Cobra Kai series kind of revitalized that.
So, Mr. Tyler Kurd, we wish you the best of luck at this tournament. I think you have our support just because of your club.
Have you actually watched those movies? Because I've watched all. Well, technically, there's 5 movies, including the Jaden Smith movie.
I actually haven't watched any of them.
I've watched all 5. You've got a lot of room. You've got a lot of time on the weekends during the off season at college. So, and some of the RAs, they would just pull out some movies for movie night, and I watched all 4 original Karate Kid movies with Pat Morita.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
it's funny because I was just like, that's not Okinawa. I'm just thinking that's not Okinawan culture. You are subbing in Okinawan culture for Japanese culture, for mainland Japan. Because for those of you who don't know, even though Okinawa is a prefecture of Japan, it's basically the equivalent of Hawaii. It was culturally very different. It was its own. It was basically its own kingdom, separate from Japan. And in some ways, culturally, it was more similar to China than it was mainland Japan. But was it after the Meiji Restoration that they basically exerted control?
Yeah, I think so.
It was, it was probably about that same. Well, and if you think about it, it was about that same time that the U.S. annexed Hawaii. So it was a very, it was one of those things where it was very similar. So, but you know, the Karate Kid series establishes Pat Morita as a you know, this guy from Okinawa, but culturally he's more similar to mainland Japan. So it was one of those things where they did a cultural, you know, a cultural thing, but it's like, because if you go, well, not to mention the scenes where they actually filmed, subbed in for Okinawa were filmed in Hawaii. It's
because it's similar.
It's just also convoluted, but well, you know, another thing, I actually watched karate experts compare the two, and even though they don't really have specific karate styles, but the main gist is that the Miyagi style karate is a variation of Shotokan karate, and I forget what the more aggressive one is, but that's basically what the Cobra Kai style is supposed to be. It's funny how we are on a wrestling podcast, and because of a Cobra Kai, a team Cobra Kai, we're talking about karate styles.
So Matthew, I think with that being said, I want to kind of move on to the next subject. You know, it'll be interesting to see, you know, hey, who's going to come out on top at the U.S. Open?
Anything can happen at the U.S. Open.
Yeah. So with that being said, so there are some people who have declared that they're going to accept their spots, their seed berths at Final X. So let me just kind of go. I'm just going to go through each of them. There appears to be 7 that have accepted. So the first person who announced it was Dayton Fix of Oklahoma State, and he was a world medalist last year, and he is going to be in the Final X wrestle off, and this one is going to take place at Stillwater, so fitting for him that it's going to be right in his backyard.
Yeah, he's got the home field advantage.
Yeah, so you know that'll be interesting to see how he does. So that's the first one. This one should not come as any surprise. Burroughs is going to accept his Final X spot for New York, and that's going to take place after the Stillwater Final X. So that'll be the second.
Remind me, where's Burroughs originally from?
Where's Burroughs from?
Yeah.
Didn't he? I thought, now I could be wrong. I thought I had seen that he wrestled for Nebraska. Yes, he wrestled for Nebraska. He was a 2-time NCAA.
Yeah, but I was looking for that birthplace, New Jersey.
Yeah, New Jersey.
So he's about as close to home field advantage as he can get.
Right. So, and then I don't know if we had touched on this, but you know, he will probably, so in the meantime, he's going to be wrestling at 79, but for 2024, he does want to make one final comeback, it seems. And it looks like he's not going to go up. He's going to come down. So he's going to really push himself for that 74 kilo spot. And
right, and he's going to have to match up against Dake.
It's probably going to be Dake, you know, barring anything, you know.
I forgot what happened. What was the result of their match at that Flow Wrestling event? That one-time wrestle off.
Now I thought Dake had won it, but I'm not certain. I'd have to go back and look it up. In fact, maybe might have actually. So he lost to Dake at the Olympic team trials. And let's
Well,
see.
at that point, we don't even need to see the whatever that event was, because if that was the case, even if he'd won it, Dake would still have the at minimum 2-1 advantage.
Right. So that was
But I think
that.
something like this would be important enough to put on
Beat the streets on his Wikipedia page, maybe.
yeah, I think even when he was still wrestling, Daniel Cormier competed in one of those flow wrestling events.
So let's see here.
He was in good enough graces with the UFC, because when you're with the UFC exclusive contract, you have to get special permission or have it written in the contract. But he's in good enough graces with the UFC and Dana White that he would have been allowed to compete in that.
Sorry, who are we talking about again?
Cormier.
Ah, yes. Mm-hmm.
I've never known him to like badmouth Dana White. He's always been on good terms with Dana White.
Yeah, DC likes talking.
Yeah, because some guys they've been on good terms with Dana White. They've been on not so good terms with Dana White. You see the relationship change throughout the years. Whereas, as far as I know, Cormier, I don't think he's ever said a bad thing about Dana White.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like how Dana White also said that he has never said a bad thing about Donald Trump, even though Trump at one point was investing in an investor in Affliction, who was competing with the UFC.
Yeah. It's like don't bite the hand that feeds you. So that's Burroughs. So Burroughs is the second person. This one should not be a surprise either. I mean, Snyder, Kyle Snyder back on board. So he's going to be at the Stillwater event. I mean,
They didn't just have one article. They just did individual articles saying this person accepts, this person accepts, this person accepts.
Yeah, basically. And, they're talking about, the accomplishments that each person has done, and stuff, which I think is a good thing. You want to know how they did and stuff like that. So then our first woman wrestler, which is your teammate, Helen Maroulis, has accepted her spot, and she will be wrestling at the New York event on June 8th. So she will be interesting to see how she does and who's going to be her challenger after the challenge tournament.
Oh, she's going to be, yeah, okay. Kind of the funny thing that I've said and several other people have said is the fact that she's Greek.
Mm-hmm.
So she's essentially fulfilling her by wrestling. She's essentially fulfilling her birthright, basically. An interesting thing. I actually have read up on a lot of the Greek events. So the Olympics was men only, but there actually was a Greek women's athletic event in ancient Greece, and it served the same purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just an all-male thing. Granted, the Olympics was exclusive to men, but it wasn't exclusively a male thing. So women wrestling is as old as the Olympics itself. So another interesting thing, apparently there was an Olympic cycle. But what would happen is you would have 4 separate events that were staggered throughout the Olympic cycle. The first one was the Olympics, which took place every 4 years, took place in Athens every time. Then you had 2 other athletic events that took place every 2 years. The first was called the Nemean Games, and the second, I forget what it was called, but those would happen the second and they basically closed out the Olympic cycle. So they were the second and fourth years. Then there was another 4-year event that happened in between the two-year games. And then after that, you had the Nemean and the other games, and then the Olympic cycle started all over again with the Olympics. So, well, if you really think about it, like the World Cups and other events that happen every 2 to 4 years or something like that, it's like those kind of are the modern interpretations of those various games. If you really think about it.
That's a good history lesson. That's interesting.
Well, this coming from the history buff.
So Matthew,
I did study history in college.
Speaking of a little bit of history for you, they did you know, the article about Helen did make mention. Four-time WCWA college national champion, winning 3 titles for Simon Fraser and 1 for one certain Missouri Baptist.
She was the first champion in either wrestling team.
Yeah, isn't that?
And she's wrestling in New York. She's got relatively home advantage because she's a Maryland gal.
Yeah, East Coast.
Yeah, you know, something I'll never forget. In one of the Ravens games after in 2016 after her Olympics, she appeared there and they were like, "Congrats, Ellen!" They did this big old presentation in front of, you know, it's like, "Congrats, Maryland natives." They honored her at this game. I can't remember which one.
Yeah, you know, I don't see an issue with that at all, you know, especially when, you know, you have someone who, you know, from your town or your state, and hey, they've gone out and done a great thing. So I don't see why you wouldn't honor the achievements of, you know, said person doing that. And you know, and I'm sure this has been rehashed, you know, quite a few times. It's like, you know, when Helen did what she did at 2016, it was she shocked the world. You know, it was, you know, I know that I've heard how she doesn't really like being compared to Rulon in that aspect where, you know, Rulon upset Karelin, you know, so, but, you know,
the equivalent though, let's face it.
Well, it's basically, it is the same thing. You've got a dominant 3-time Olympic champion facing off against someone who had, you know, not been, I don't think Rulon had been to the Olympics before, had he?
He had not.
And I don't think, you know, Helen had not been to the Olympics either. And in both cases, they had met, you know, the person that they beat, you know, Rulon and Helen, they had both met Karelin and Yoshida, and they both been beat badly in those previous matches, you know. So to come out and you know, it was just one of those things. So, you know, I know I've heard she doesn't like being compared to Rulon, but the fact of the matter is she did do a Rulon. There's no, you can't get out of that.
The similarities are very striking. She won Olympic gold medal. She won a world championship. She got injured in between. She comes back after, you know, having dealt with all these injuries afterwards, and she takes bronze.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
you know, hey, Rulon, yeah, he won the gold. You know,
lost a toe.
But yeah, he had that ski accident. You know, he lost his toe. He still came back though, you know, and hey, he got a bronze. And
now, granted, Helen didn't have to deal with an injury shortly before the Olympics. Rulon had a wrist injury motorcycling, so he went to the athletes Olympics with his wrist tied up. Helen didn't have to deal with that.
But yeah, you know, it's so we'll you know,
I could still see her slapping me in person if I were to make that comparison. she's the type of girl who would do it's not and it's not like saying that she's like an abusive or violent person. It's just that she wouldn't like it, and she'd probably be comfortable enough with me to know that you know she can get away with it. And I would just be like, yeah, I was asking for that.
Yeah. We have our second female wrestler who declared, and this was Tamira Menza Stock. So, you know, I remember reading that article a couple weeks back about how she might be questionable, you know, the one on Flow, but I'm glad to see that she's going to be back. So, and
I would like to know, because I never heard anything about the WWE, and she said that she wanted to do the same thing as Gable Stevenson and go into the WWE and dominate. I was just like, so is the WWE not interested? Let's face it. The WWE is looking at a certain type of woman. Ronda Rousey still fit that certain type of woman.
Yeah, she's got personality. Ronda Rousey's got personality.
Well, Tamira's got the personality, but she's got that like bubbly, joy type of personality. Whereas, let's face it, if you're in the WWE, you're expected to have a little bit of feistiness to you. So, cool, because talking about WWE, you need to have the ability to either be a baby face or be a heel. So the question is, would she just be this perpetual baby face, or would she be able to turn heel if the situation called for it? Like even for those people who made a life as like a baby face, let's face it, they served some point of their career as a heel. Again, we're talking about pro wrestling and amateur wrestling podcast.
So the stock, her final X is going to be at Oklahoma State. And that's
her background. She's from Texas.
Yeah, she's from Texas.
So that's close.
Yeah.
Well, Oklahoma's right above Texas, so
it is. Yes,
it's close to home field advantage.
So moving on to our sixth wrestler who has declared, and this is actually our first Greco wrestler, Giangelo Hancock.
Well, let's face it, there's not a whole lot of Greco wrestlers who got Final X according to the criteria, Final X reservations.
But, hey, in his case, he had a bronze at the World Championships, which, I think anytime the U.S. gets a medal, at either the World Championships or the Olympics is.
In Greco nowadays
that's quite an accomplishment.
They've always been more competitive in freestyle, but Greco, it's kind of a big deal because Greco's always been dominated by the Eastern Bloc.
Well, the thing that rings.
Let's face it, we don't know how the Eastern Bloc is going to be influenced with the absence of Russia and Belarus. We talked about that before, but
Well, the thing about it always seems to be the trend is like or at least FILA, when it was FILA, it'd always be changing the rules because they want to beat the Americans.
When they should be concentrating on beating the Eastern Bloc.
Yeah. So Hancock will be again the 97 kilo wrestler, Final X wrestler for Greco. So that's the first and only Greco declared so far. If there
are any other Grecos who?
I think there was like one or two more that have a chance at it.
I have to be honest, just as an experiment, I'd like to see there be some kind of women's Greco competition.
Sometimes.
Just as an experiment, I'd like to see that happen.
It's already been happening. It happens at the low level. Like, when I first got back here from Japan, and there was a female wrestler that I was helping to coach, and so she'd tag along with some of the other guys when we would go to the freestyle tournaments, and she wasn't that great, but you know, at least she was trying to get out there and wrestle and stuff. And if you know, because she was only a freshman, if the girls were close enough in age to her and weight, then you know she would, you know, the other coaches would allow their high school girls to wrestle, you know, the college girl that we would, you know, take along. Anyway, so at some of the LA tournaments, they were actually doing women's Greco, you know, to see how it's going out and stuff. And I think when I refereed at Esperanza, you know, a couple weeks ago, I think I saw, you know, they were having girls Greco matches there too. So I think, you know, I'm hoping at some point, you know, I would definitely like to see, you know, hey, that would be something in and of itself, especially if we could get women's Greco to be an Olympic, you know, entry. I'm sure a lot of women would try to, you know, it would provide a golden opportunity because not a lot of, you know, Greco is not as big in the US, you know, as it is out in, again, like you mentioned, the Eastern Bloc, Europe. It's just not
Middle
as
East. It's popular in the Middle East.
Yeah, it's popular in the Middle East. It's popular in Europe. It's just not popular out here. I know it's not popular in Japan. You know, a lot more people like doing freestyle than Greco in Japan.
Well, yeah, because you know when we talked about Japanese wrestling, there's what, one Greco tournament in high school,
So
or are there other tournaments where they have?
they'll have. Let's see here. They'll have one national high school Greco tournament. I know when they do their Kanto tournament, they split it up so that they'll have freestyle and Greco. And then when they do the Kokutai, which is the national, the Kokutai is like all the prefectures compete against each other in a way. And they'll split between freestyle and Greco for that one too. Just depending on the weight classes. It's
The Kokutai is like a dual tournament, right?
not necessarily. It's you're in a single elimination bracket, and then how far you progress scores points for the prefecture is how that's done.
Right. Whereas everything else is individual. It's either team or it's either team or individual based.
Let's get on to the last person who has declared her spot in Final X, which is Jenna Burkett. She will be competing in Final X at Stillwater.
West Army.
Yep. So let me see here. She took the bronze medal at the 55 kilo weight class at the 2021 World Championships. And she finished second at the Olympic trials, so she barely missed out on that. But she is coming back, so it'll be interesting. Although in her case, it looks like she won't be in her backyard because she's from Rocky Point, New York. So she'll be a little bit out there, but, you know. So that concludes our 7 wrestlers that are going to be in the Final X for the World Team Trials.
I forgot, when's the deadline to declare?
It's in May.
Yeah,
So-
that's what I thought. Yeah.
So that's why you're seeing, you know, you're seeing them coming out now, you know, preparing, you know, saying that they are going to accept the offer. I think, as we had been mentioning before, I don't think Gable's, you know, since we saw, you know, Gable Steveson was at he was at WrestleMania. So, you know, he's probably with you know, he's probably going to be on what I think NXT is the developmental Um,
It is, but from what I've been reading, he's already been drafted to Raw.
that's quite a, that's quite a,
Yeah, you don't see that very often. Like they did that with Kurt Angle too. So,
be interesting.
but of
Well,
course, WWE has been notorious lately for fudging up very promising talent, which is why a lot of the times they'll go to AEW, where AEW, because they're run by wrestlers and not by promoters or writers, they actually know what they're doing. So,
and I found it interesting, because Cody Rhodes helped develop AEW, and now
I'm still not exactly sure why he left. Because yeah, he helped found and develop.
he helped build it up really well, and yeah, now he's back in the WWE.
Where when he left, he was saddled with a heart. Have you've heard of his? Well, his brother.
Yeah, his brother is Goldust.
Yeah, his brother was Goldust. Well, he was saddled when he left to basically. Well, he did not help create AEW right away when he left the WWE like 6 or 7 years ago. He first went on to the indie scene, but he left because he was saddled with a gimmick very similar to Goldust.
Right. Yeah, I remember seeing clips of that.
Yeah, the Stardust gimmick, and it had kind of started going not as nutty as the Goldust gimmick was as its nuttiest, but it was kind of going in a weird direction, and so he wasn't happy with it. So it's just like, I want to leave. So
yeah, he has to be released from his contract.
yeah, and because WWE nowadays especially at the time, they had essentially a monopoly on the top talent. So they're like, okay, you want to go, you can go. Not realizing that they were essentially creating their biggest competitor at this point.
Well, yeah, because they had absorbed WCW, and then
they got the cream of the crop. They could get someone from New Japan if they wanted to. They could get someone from Europe if they wanted to, which they've gotten both.
Because their competitors, it was WCW, and then there was one other organization,
ECW.
ECW. Yeah,
Impact was never highly up there. At the best, they were probably a super indie.
So now they got to deal with AEW.
Well, and the way that the AEW operates is it has this very specific style. So they're not like WCW was, where they're wasting money buying washed up guys. They have a very specific type of pro wrestling that they want to get. So they're not picking up every willy-nilly person from they're not on these huge bidding wars. They're picking guys who specifically adhere to the type of style they want to go with. So they've developed their own style as a result. They're not ripping off WWE, which ended up being WCW's downfall. They're also not giving these guys like huge control. They're giving it's like they've got creative input, but it's not the thing where it's like you don't see the AEW championship flip-flopping like 10 times in a year or 4 times in 1 month. That's how bad it was towards the end of WCW. That's one of the reasons why it went under. Not to mention you had actors like David Arquette and writers like
oh yeah, they'd bring in people that had absolutely no business being.
Yeah, so it's like there's a reason why
I remember
WCW crashed in the end.
That's
AEW is being smart with how they conduct business.
I think David Arquette actually made like a pro wrestling themed movie, and I think
Ready to Rumble.
Yeah, Ready to Rumble.
That's the whole reason why they brought him in. He did a WCW themed movie, and they said, "Oh, let's capitalize on this." And he himself said, I don't think this is a good idea, because he's an actual pro wrestling fan. He's like, I don't think this is a good idea. And they somehow coaxed him into it.
Speaking of development, Matthew.
Oh yeah.
So in closing, and you know, I think this is I think will be the first time that we'll be doing this, which is basically just kind of talking about, you know, certain topics and stuff. So I thought it would be great to talk about what makes a championship team when it comes to wrestling. And, you know, when you think about it, there are a lot of factors that have to be in play for there to be a championship team, you know, and there's a lot of ways you can look at it. You can have a team that's going to be consistently good, like, for example, placing at state, you know, in top 10 at state on a consistent basis. You may have a team that's going to be like a one-off, you know, it's just that their timing was just right, and they're going to go out there and win that state championship, and then they're never going to be competitive again. You can have, and then you have your dynasties. You're going to have, you know, the teams that are going to win, and they're going to win, you know, almost every single year. They're going to win consecutive championships. So, you know, there's a lot of things in play, you know, and I think when it comes down to, let's talk about the head coach first. You know, what do you think is important about a head coach and his responsibilities and abilities in order to be able to coach a championship team?
Well, he needs to be a good coach. So he needs to be able to know the techniques that he's teaching these guys. He needs to be able to develop a relationship with these guys. And, you know, as we mentioned before, it's like that could be something like with Brands or Jay Robinson, where they're tough, but they've got it's kind of, I describe it as like maybe a love-hate relationship, where they're tough on them, but that toughness also develops a mutual respect towards each other. And in a way, it also would weed out maybe certain people who don't do well with that coaching style. Whereas with guys like Kale, for example, he you know, it's like drill, you know, drill. Let's do this stuff. Let me show you this stuff. But it's like more of like a positive attitude. So it's like positive but firm. It's like, let's do this. You want to be a champion? Let's do this. Mm-hmm. So also the coaching is basic. Another thing about coaching is being able to delegate certain roles to other coaches. Like, you need to have a strong assistant coach, possibly multiple assistant coaches. And for like for high school, for example, developing a feeder program would be a good way of helping to and obviously you can't oversee that yourself, because as we've talked earlier, during the high school or college season, the high school season, you need to be able to concentrate on your high schoolers. So you delegate the feeder program to other coaches. And I actually was kind of involved in that, because at Olu, when Chris Elder was the head coach, he had a feeder program as well. So he kind of, it wasn't very big, and he ultimately left before it could be very effective, but he did have that idea of, I want to get these guys started and be able to plug them in there. So that's, yeah, there's a combination of have the technique, being able to respect, being able to find coaches that you can respect, who would be able to do stuff like one example we'll point out, you know, at Santa Ana, Silva, because of his job, was very dependent on his assistants, whether that was Vito Becerra or whether, I forgot, who's the guy right now? Your old teammate?
Alan.
Yeah, Alan. Yeah, so depending on them to be able to do stuff like recruiting and training outside of matches and practices and even the off-season stuff and stuff like that. But being able to do that stuff, that stuff like that is important to developing relationships. So
right, and there's a thing about also, again, yeah, recruiting is a very big thing, especially when you're going to be, at the college level. Depending on how things go
in college is make or break for a program.
Right. Being able to recognize talent, for one, and two, whether or not you're going to be able to recruit that talent, to come to your program. What are you going to be offering, those wrestlers, to come to your program? And I think, and like you've talked about before, where, Iowa is a brand name, not just and this isn't just a pun on Tom Brands, but it's a brand name in wrestling. Iowa is a premier program. Hey, that's where Gable really made.
That was the house that Gable built.
Right. And so you got Tom Brands maintaining that, and with his kind of I'm not gonna say he's got like the bad boy attitude, but he's very, very passionate.
He doesn't have a bad boy attitude. He's got a tough guy attitude.
Yeah.
There's a slight difference, because a bad boy actually looks to create trouble. Brands does not look to create trouble.
He's a very, so a good thing to say is he's very, very, very passionate about wrestling and wanting his team to succeed, obviously. I find it funny how, it's like if you watch I've seen a couple times where you'll be watching a duel at Iowa, and his wrestler is about to pin someone, and the ref is looking for the pin, and Brands is literally in the ref's ear saying he's pinned. It's like Brands himself is like 2 feet from the action on the floor like this. But then again, like you say, there's Kale. Kale knows how to. Brands is about the team. Kale is about the individuals. Because if they want to be successful, like you said, like you pointed out, where he's talked about, it's a different style, we could say, but it's where it's applicable also that works. And also another thing another important thing about trying to build a championship team is is geographical. Where are you getting your talent from? Or if it's homegrown, that's going to be a big difference between college and high school, because in college,
high school, you are literally getting everyone from.
You're getting right. You're getting whatever is coming into your program is what you're getting, unless you do have a feeder program, then you kind of know what you're getting. But sometimes, you got some of these coaches, they can only take what they can get, because they either don't have the time or the money to invest into a feeder
resources.
Right. They don't have those resources to invest into building a feeder program. And so sometimes what you have is just your coaching style, your coaching skills and stuff.
Well, and let's face it, that's the average high school coach. They don't, because the typical high school coach is a teacher who has to balance, the life of teaching with the life of a coach, possibly also family as well. So they're not, the average high school, let's face it, doesn't have a wrestling club outside of stuff. So the wrestlers, if they want to get extra stuff, are going to have to go out, to outside competition and possibly go to other clubs in order to be able to foster more competition. That's just how it is.
Sometimes though, it's when you're gonna have, like, for example, you got the Tirapellis up in that Fresno Clovis area. You know, they're all in those Clovis schools at Buchanan and stuff. And so these are NCAA D1, you know, champion All-American wrestlers that are coming into these programs and you know, coaching these guys. And we know for a fact, you know, Central Valley has been the dominant.
It's always been a hotbed. It's like it's
You know,
always been a hotbed.
Fresno, Clovis, Bakersfield. You know, it's always been those teams that have been dominant in California wrestling. You know, you have to go back quite a ways.
Over the years, you've seen exceptions to that rule. Like in the 80s, you had both El Dorado and Canyon doing well at the state tournament. I think El Dorado won a few championships with the Lawsons. And then
El Dorado won one state title, and that was only with Scott Lawson.
Yeah, but the Lawson brothers won individual state titles. Like
yes,
yeah, with Scott and I keep forgetting who the oldest brother is, who's just not involved. He's not coaching, but
right.
Yeah, but like you've got that, like and then during the 90s to 2000s, you had the Calvary Chapels, and then you had Poway here and there.
Right.
Poway, well, and let's look at it. Poway is one of those programs with the feeder program.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then also looking at the Valley doing good in the 80s, Lemoore High School, literally right in my backyard, won a few state championships. So, and I've actually read that, yeah, like in the 80s and possibly as early as the 70s, you had Clovis schools winning that maybe aren't as dominant now, but they were winning state championships. So yeah, the Valley has always been a place for wrestling.
So I'm trying to look at, okay, so the last time, so I'm on Cal Grappler right now. The last time that a non-central section school won the state title, looks like it was Poway in 2009. You know what, though? I think, yes, that's right, because 2010, Bakersfield won it, and then Clovis went on their 5-year winning streak from 2011 to 2015. And then from there, and then since 2016, it's all been Buchanan, which, by the way, Buchanan, they won their first title in 2006.
Yeah, I remember that. They won when I was a junior, and we were just like, whoa, what's happening?
And you know, again, you know, the Tirapelli family is all up in that Fresno Clovis area. You know, and hey, they're helping build powerhouse programs. So you know, nothing like a little bit of family competition, though. I can't imagine how Thanksgiving and Christmas is when they all get together. But you know, and I think also it helps build like some of these championship programs. Also, you know, I mean, obviously you have to have supportive administrations. You know, I don't think a lot of these places could not get stuff done if they did not have, you know, these schools being really supportive. And again, you know, like you mentioned, the assistant coaches. I think, like, for example, you know, Fresno City, which is currently the dominant wrestling program in, you know, the California JC division. You know, they've won like 13 overall state titles, and Paul Keesaw, who is the current coach, you know, he's won 9 of those. And I think it's kind of like when Kale went to you know, Penn State. Paul Keesaw actually was the coach at Moore Park, which is kind of in northern LA County. And he did okay. He actually won a couple of state titles, you know, with Moore Park. you know, but then he goes up to Fresno State and he finds, you know, very good success. It's probably because he's able to make the right connections. You know, a lot of his, you know, I do believe that there quite a few of his assistant coaches are involved with other programs, probably with some of the other high schools up there. They probably do their own club stuff. So, you know, they're able to also recruit if they can, which is, you know, good. You know, that's how you want to bring people in and introduce people in. So, you know, that's a way that your assistant coaches are able to, you know, work for you and stuff. Alumni, obviously, if you've had successful alumni, you're going to, you know, be able to have those alumni talk to future prospects. I think also the thing is, you know, the boosters. You know, I remember who was like the really big booster at Villa Park when when you were there?
Besides Dad,
Dad was the big booster.
my senior year, he was the big booster. He didn't even want to be the president because he wanted to create a line of succession because there was, I forget what Tony Mercado's dad is, but he was the president of the booster club when I was there, or my sophomore year. Then my junior year was McBride, and Dad had just seen this line of the seniors who were the presidents, and he was just like, well, I don't want that to happen. So he insisted on the parent of a junior being the president of the booster club, and he would be the vice president and you know, help out from there. He wanted a clear line of succession.
Interesting. But yeah, I think you know, because when you're wanting to go to tournaments and stuff, or if you're wanting to really go to, you know, off-season tournaments, you know, you got to have the funding. And I think a booster, you know, having a successful booster program definitely helps, you know, make that worthwhile. So, you know, I think that's kind of, you know, some things I think that are important about, you know, building a championship program. I think, you know, timing is obviously one thing, you know, especially like, you know, maybe it's not working at one school. Like we saw that with Kale when he was at Iowa State, and then he moved out to Penn State. And he just, you know, like you've mentioned before, he just tapped into unreal. I think yeah, he's tapped into some unrealized talent and just helped make things just go off in a direction we'd never seen before, I think.
Yeah, well, that's another thing is that I'm not sure exactly if Gable spent any time coaching at Iowa State, but we know that he went to Iowa, and that's where it took off for Gable. But yeah, well, and then of course, as you pointed out, the coaching style with Kale was the factors, because Kale concentrates on the individual. Kale clearly concentrates on the individual, but he's not the type of guy who puts it all his eggs in one basket. He, as we have seen, he concentrates on the individual, but he concentrates on the individuals across the whole team. Brands, as you said, is more of a team building guy where it's like team. Whereas Kale is, I'm sure that there is some team building there as well, but he knows this is an individual sport, and he knows that in order for the if you want a successful team, you need to make sure that every individual is doing their part. So he concentrates on those, and because of and with the way that it went, just with also the fact that he was in Pennsylvania, which is a lot of people don't know is a high school wrestling stronghold. He was able to make that perfect winning formula.
So it looks like I'm looking at Gable's Wikipedia, and it looks like he after the 72, is it 72 Olympics? Yeah, he competed at the 72 Olympics. And then he kind of competed you know, from time to time after that, but it was after he retired in 76 that he became. So looks like Iowa was the first place he went to before you know, becoming. So that was the only place it looks like that he was really a head coach. He wasn't really coaching anywhere else. But just being able to do that, you know, it's like the first program where you really hit it off. That is something, because, you know, sometimes it's going to take a while before you're going to find the right place to, you know, it might take you a while before you find the right place. I mean, you see that with Kale. I think also sometimes it's like when you're building a dynasty, like for example, you know, Grandview, you know, in the NAIA, you know, they are the team right now. That's probably because, you know, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how the rivalry with Life goes out from here. You know, could Life, you know, in Georgia mount something for next year? It'll be interesting to see. Sometimes, you know, sometimes it might be your competition too, you know, the level that you're at where you can build the dynasty also. I mean, just look at D3, you know, you got Wartburg and Augsburg. They've been winning the titles since 1995 at D3 level.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And yeah, it's the thing with like in the like smaller like other divisions, it's like we've been seeing with D2. D2's been in this constant flux, but then we talked about, yeah, with the D3, it's Wartburg and Augsburg have been, you know, going back and forth, but then you have NAIA where, yeah, you had Grandview on this
nine consecutive titles.
Yeah, who got dethroned by Life, and then Grandview came back. So it's one of those things where, yeah, we don't know if this is going to be like a rivalry for a while, or if this is eventually going to, you know, what else is going to happen. But it's something we're just going to have to wait and see how it all goes.
All right. Well, with that being said, Matthew, we're going to go ahead and close out this episode. You know, I think next week, obviously, I think our main topic will be, you know, how and what happened at the U.S. Open. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of results from that, seeing how things are going, and you know, then how are things going to be looking for, you know, the World Team Trials. We'll probably have some more people declare accepting the Final X spots.
And that's going to be like a multi-week thing in and of itself, because of how all those individual tournaments are going to be spread out. So that's going to be a saga that we'll be talking about well into the summer.
Okay, Matthew. So I think again, where can people find our videos?
Let's see. Our video is currently on YouTube and Rumble, and then our audio is on Apple, Acast, Spotify, and Google. As I mentioned before, more platforms are to be added. That's just one of those constantly ongoing projects.
And then also Matthew does run MMAfreak.com, so it's MMA-freak.com, I believe. And you can also find Matthew at Matthew Salzer on Twitter
and Instagram.
And then also, yes, and on Instagram. And then also, if you want to give MMA Freak a follow, MMA Freak Out on Twitter. So if you want to get more MMA coverage from Matthew, make sure that you follow him on there. So again, let's see how the U.S. Open goes, and I am hoping to put out some material on sumo wrestling, and then also on some Japanese wrestling if I'm able to find time away from work.
Also, continue to check out our clips. Those apparently are more popular, than, at least on YouTube, than the podcast itself, it appears. So continue to look for those.
All right. So, Matthew, as always, great talking with you about stuff related to wrestling. And hopefully we'll see how things go for next week. So, till then, everybody, thanks as always for watching the program and listening also. And we will see you all next week.